What's going on, guys? My name is Arrow, and today I'm going to show you that Lightning Strike is back. So in this build, we are using Lightning Strike of Arcing. This gem essentially is designed to give you more damage for each time a projectile has already chained, which is kind of the opposite of how Cobra Lash works. And the problem with the gem that you have to solve is you have to get enough damage on the first hit that your bossing capability will still be there. It's a very, very good mapper. The more mobs that are in the map, the more damage you're going to do to them. We have 10 chains built in with no further chain investment outside of the gem. And that means the 10th mob that's hit by the projectile gets 100% more damage applied to it. So in order to make this viable for all content, I needed to get as much damage as possible on that first hit without any of the bonus damage from the chain. And we do that with intelligent stacking. Some of this gear is going to appear really unachievable, but I'm going to show you how to get it, how to solve for some of the gear pieces that look more difficult to get than others. This build is far from min-maxed. I left a lot on the table here, partially because I did Ubers, I did all the content that I wanted, so I didn't feel the need to continue to min-max it, but also because I wanted it to feel approachable enough for someone who wanted to get into this sort of Int-Stacking. The skill is incredibly fun. It solves the problem that Lightning Strike has always had for me, which I felt like the projectiles always were getting stuck on things. One pebble or box and your DPS goes to 0. With this transfigured gem, you have it so your projectiles are all chaining, and chains will auto-target in a way that piercing does not, resulting in significantly more reliable damage uptime and also much better life gain on hit, ES gain on hit, and instant leech, etc. This build is not cheap. Again, this league with how available currency is, don't feel so bad spending a couple hundred divines on a build, especially this late into the league. If you need some tips on how to make currency, go back and watch my boss rushing strat. It's not quite as profitable as it was before, but fracturing orbs are still in the 40s and you can make yourself a lot of currency. This is not super beginner friendly because you're going to have to do some crafting and you're going to have to solve some problems. So if this is your first or second build, definitely don't be diving into something like this. But if you are an experienced crafter, this is going to be a very fun build for you to put together. I was able to easily take down the Feared, hit a couple of Uber bosses, which I usually don't even do. But this build is so tanky and has so much damage that I pretty much had to. This build has thousands of ES recovered per second on a single target. It has Fortify, it has Evade Cap, it has Block, it has very high spell suppress, and it has a massive amount of Elusive from Nightblade. I was even able to take down some pretty intense tier 17 Valdos maps, although those aren't my favorite maps to run, and they certainly wasn't going to do any voided maps with this build. We did take down some Tormented, Feared, and things like that in the Valdos map. So if you're interested in doing some of that, this build can definitely take on some of that content. So let's dive in and talk about it and get you playing. So here we have level 97 Piers Morrigan. We leveled this from the beginning with Lightning Strike of Arcing. It was very smooth to level with. Obviously, I don't recommend it necessarily on League Start, but with a little bit of twin gear, it was phenomenal to fly through the axe with. So it's an int stacker that only gets 1200 int. What happened was I had about 1500, and then in optimizing the build, I ended up taking some intelligence away. I also hit my amulet with a Jorgen in an attempt to get a 3 rat or % attributes and did not get it, so I lost even more intelligence there. You can get significantly higher intelligence than me. Honestly, the weakest part of this build right now is the talisman because I never really hit the one that I wanted to hit. You can make up for a ton of damage in this slot. So on that note, let's talk about the weapon. This is the elephant in the room. Everyone's going to say, I can't get that weapon and I can't play this build. This is not as unachievable as it looks. Number 1, increased spell damage per intelligence is available on an amulet. This amulet is pretty much just 100 int and energy shield. Easily can make this significantly stronger. It doesn't have an implicit. So what I would probably recommend doing is crafting a percent int shaper. I think it's Crusader, percent int and damage per int. And then you don't have to worry about the implicit that's on this synthesized slaughter knife. The second implicit, you can get that by itself fairly cheap. I think they're around a divine last I looked. I recommend getting it on a dagger. The base attack speed and the crit chance of the dagger is important, but the most important thing is that you get the flat damage to attacks. Now, if let's say tons of people want to play this and those all sell out, you actually can get this mod from a shaper dagger. So you basically want to craft a shaper dagger with crit chance, pen, this flat damage roll, attack speed, and hits can't be evaded. I don't have a crafting guide for that because I didn't have to make one of those, but if you want to play this build, you can craft a dagger like that and you don't need the synth base at all. Because of how bad my amulet is, it basically makes up for half of the implicits on here. The chaos damage doesn't do anything for us. And it'd be pretty easy to see, it'd be pretty easy to catch up to my damage pretty quickly without the implicits here. So don't craft this exactly as I have it unless you have the exact same base, which probably doesn't exist. And the reason that we are using the spell damage per int is this helmet. The Crown of Eyes increases and reductions to spell damage apply to attacks at 150% of their value. This gives us a ton of attack damage. On the amulet, there's a ton of options. Definitely recommend getting the damage per int, but you can also go for flat int. You can go for percent attributes, percent intelligence. You could go for a 3 rat. You could do a lot of things in this slot. I had, I think it was strength and int as the implicits on this, which of course I removed. But lots you can do with the amulet slot. Series Reflection is not best in slot for us. You could do much better with a synth base, but I honestly just stopped min-maxing the build and never got to upgrading the shield. This is a very strong shield for what we're doing. Getting as much evasion and energy shield and intelligence and resist gives us curse immunity, so it saves us a flash slot. Very, very strong. These rings, we're only a couple of divines, but there's not many of them out there. They are percent intelligence synthesized topaz rings, so they got buff effect and lightning damage while affected by Herald of Thunder. Now these are not going to be very available. However, just don't use Herald of Thunder and then craft your own int rings, and that makes up for the damage that you'd lose by having this base. Also, crafting your own int rings solves a lot of other problems. You can get crit multi, you could get attack speed if you wanted, you could get flat damage, you could get percent damage with attacks. This was just a very easy and cheap solution because these were available, but like I said, they're not going to be available for you. Therefore, just craft on a percent intelligence base ring and get some damage, get some energy shield, and you're going to be better off than I was with these 2 rings. These boots are going to be pretty difficult to craft as is. These are very good. Got very lucky. Got some help from a viewer crafting these. We made, I think, 4 pairs of these and eventually hit the nuts on the prefixes. So this gives us shock immune because we use the Storm Shroud. Basically, you want to use the essence until you hit int and a res on your suffix. And then your prefixes you finish based on what fracture that you have. If you have percent fracture, you obviously want to get flat. I actually just recommend going for the veil, getting the movement speed, and then just crafting on intelligence. Or crafting on energy shield, excuse me. You're going to lose a little bit of ES, but it's not that big of a deal. The Mage Blood is only mandatory in this build. The Mage Blood is mandatory for me in this build because of these rings. I easily could have gotten my resistances solved with rings if I didn't go for these. So if you go for percent int, you actually don't need the Mage Blood. You could go for a Headhunter. You could go for a really powerful Stygian, whatever it is that you want to do. But Mage Blood was kind of mandatory because I didn't really have any place left to finish off my resistances. We'll get to the Mage Blood in a little bit, but honestly, it really is not that important. I actually probably would recommend playing this with a Headhunter if you could build around that because of how powerful projectiles are in Headhunter builds. So the gloves, I played this build with +1 strike for the most part, and when I got the 2nd strike, it definitely added to the power of the build, but it wasn't even really that noticeable, so I wouldn't worry about it unless you were doing super high density maps. Basically what you want to do here is fracture int and then do the prefixes with dense fossils. Lots of suffixes that you can get, whatever your build needs, that's what you can get on your suffix. For the chest, this was a super fun craft. I went and got a hybrid base and then spammed with dense fossils again until I hit some pretty good mods. I was actually going for tier 2, tier 1 if I could on the prefixes to try to get the most ES possible, but then I hit tier 1 intelligence with these two prefixes and I said, all right, I have to keep this, and then I slammed on tier 1 fire. So very, very cool chest. We got pretty lucky making this. We made a few chests getting here, so this wasn't like this didn't happen right away, but definitely very lucky to hit the tier 1 int and not have to craft that manually with Eldritch Currency, because that can take a while. So 770 ES alongside of tier 1 int and attributes in fire res feels pretty awesome. So the flasks on the Mage Blood here, we have Onslaught. This reduced mana cost of skills is actually not as important as you'd think. 3 mana. Oh, it's 15 mana without the flask, which means if you go rare rings, which you are going to need to, you just craft minus mana cost on one of them or both. Both will get you down to 1 mana cost, which is actually less than I have with this flask. So don't worry about the minus mana cost from the Mage Blood if you go for rare rings. We have attack speed on this flask, crit chance, and move speed here. And then I grabbed stun immunity and some spell suppress and permanent phasing on the quartz flask. This felt pretty nice. Definitely not mandatory to go for a quartz flask. You can kind of do whatever you want here, but I didn't get my spell suppress to cap. We only have 58 without lucky. I really wasn't dying on this build, so I didn't feel like I needed it, but you can kind of do whatever you want there. Talk about the gems quick. Dread Banner is going to help us get to cap. We have really good uptime of Berserk because of the Berserker Ascendancy on Scion. It's obviously not full uptime. It's not like one of the old Rage Glove builds where you just have regen, so it's up all the time. You pretty much just get to use it whenever you want it, and it comes back very, very fast. In the helmet, we have Haste, Grace, Discipline, and Enlighten level 3. We have our totems in our shield here. Faster attacks is not necessary. I was actually just leveling this up here. We have Herald of Thunder down with a Mortal Call cast when damage taken setup. I use a Assassin's Mark and Mark on hit support in order to generate power charges, but also get us to crit cap and get us a bunch of multi. This feels really nice. Our movement skill is Whirling Blades and Frostblink. And then in our main setup, Lightning Strike of Arcing, I got a 2120. I tried to get a Vol 2120, and then when I hit the Vol, I tried it and didn't even really need it. It didn't feel necessary. I think the difference between Lightning Strike and Lightning Strike of Arcing is that Lightning Strike of Arcing's clear feels significantly better, and therefore Vol Lightning Strike didn't feel as mandatory. So I actually took it back off. I had other Vol skills that I preferred, and we're just going with a 2120. We have a Nightblade support in here for massive, massive multi and crit chance and speed and elusive. Nightblade is phenomenal. Have an Inspiration getting us down to pretty low mana cost, Lightning Pen, Awaken damage with attacks, and a Multi-Strike. Awaken Multi-Strike is like 150 defines right now, so I did not buy that, but that's like a 15 or 16% damage upgrade for this build if you want to spend the money on it. So for our Ascendancy, we chose Trickster. You can do a few different things here. I wanted to get the prevent spell suppress damage on full ES because we're pretty much always at full ES due to our incredibly high leech. It gives us a good amount of more damage from masteries. We have a lot of masteries. You could go something like a Cultist to get an additional curse, but Trickster felt pretty nice. You could also probably go Assassin if you wanted. We use Deadeye down here. It gives us an additional projectile, and that combined with Multi-Shot gives us 3, and Dying Sun gets us to 5. We also take Berserker with Forbidden Flesh and Flame. Really, really good rage uptime, more damage, stun immunity after 25 rage, which I wouldn't rely on, but you can. Well, I hope you guys didn't miss me too much. I just realized my camera was off while recording the first portion of this video. So back to the content. We've got our Wildwood Ascendancy. Of course, we're using charms. You can use a tincture if you really want to use a tincture, but the charms are just so incredibly powerful that it's very hard for me to build any build that doesn't use them. So let's start at the beginning here. We've got a chain off of terrain. You don't need to have a ton of this, but having some chain off terrain gives you even more damage on bosses. And then we have take no damage from extra. And then we have take no extra damage from crits while elusive. And we are always elusive. The second our elusive comes off, the next attack will put it back on. So we are effectively crit immune unless we haven't attacked recently. This is unbelievably powerful. Crits are so dangerous this league, but you can put 10,000 blue juice on your map, and as long as you're using this, you're going to be immune to the damage from crits. And then we have banner skills have no reservation. This is just a nice, basically just a nice way to get some mana reservation efficiency, so we can use Dread Banner. Instant Leech gives us another, I think, around 1,000 ES per second on single target. And then we have some additional crit here to help us get to cap. And lastly, some block if you've attacked recently, which is pretty much all the time. The reason that block is so efficient is because we are at evade cap, which means we only get hit once in every 20 hits. When that hit comes through, your block will then roll to see if you will block the hit or not. So going from 25 to 33 is a nice boost to not getting hit as often. And then after that, we have our elusive effect. We have a ton of elusive effect from Nightblade. So we are also avoiding hits that rolls after your block. So we just don't get hit very often. When we do, we have a nice big pool of ES to take any of those bigger hits. We are crit immune, we have fortify, lots of damage mitigation layers that makes this build feel phenomenal to play. So lastly, let's talk about the tree. And we have a lot of jewels in here. And let's talk about the large clusters first. So these are actually not that expensive to buy. Effectively what you want is intelligence, 35% effect, and then there's a bunch of things that you can get after that. You can go for energy shield, you can go for attack speed, you can go for all attributes, but you can actually buy these relatively cheaply with 3 mods, which is what this one is, because that armor is pretty much a dead mod for us. So you could get a 4th mod there and add a ton of power to this build. I also have over here, this is actually a better one because it's spell damage, which is more efficient for us because of the Crown of Eyes. It makes the 10% that we get from each one become 15%. Of course, 35% turns that up to 13% increased spell damage, and then that gets multiplied by 150. So I think it's like almost 20% attack damage per node that we take. So we have a ton of increased damage. So this one has all attributes in effect. It also has armor, which again, we do not use. So you have 2 ways to make this build significantly stronger, and that is replacing armor in both of these. If you got ES, you would have maybe 1,000 more ES total. So definitely worth upgrading these into something with a second prefix that is useful. For our jewels, we've got evade, attack hits while affected by grace. This gets us to the 95 cap, and then ES per enemy hit while affected by discipline. On single target, this is a significant boost, and while mapping, it is almost an infinite amount of energy shield because we chain. So each attack, we have 3 additional strikes. So that means we have 4 strikes with 5 projectiles that chain 10 times a piece. That's best case scenario, I think 200 hits per attack. So that is 2,400 hits per second, which is 72,000 energy shield recovered per second. I think my math is right there, but that number seems absurdly high. 72,000 life, or 72,000 ES potentially recovered per second in best case scenarios. And when you are fighting super juice content, you are going to be hitting that because there are so many monsters on the screen. You'll actually be able to chain to all of them. So you're effectively immortal from getting bursted down while you are attacking, particularly during maps. So highly recommend that ES discipline. Or that which was taken, it gives us fortify, it gives us blind, it gives us instant leech, and then totem taunt, which is just kind of a bonus. It was just one that was useful. So then when we can throw down our totems on a boss right when they spawn, and it taunts them for a few seconds and gives us a chance to really get some burst damage in. I pretty much face tank everything with this build. I just stand still and attack. I probably should have worked in Arctic armor. I actually attempted to, but didn't want to spend all of the extra effort on the mana reservation efficiency. If you drop Herald of Thunder, if you do not go for the rings like I have, which again, you shouldn't go for rares, you can put Arctic armor in, give yourself a ton more mitigation, and then you'll really be able to face tank everything even better. We use a Storm Shroud. It's got mana reservation efficiency on it. I have a few spots of increased reservation efficiency. You just get as much as you need. We have 47 mana, which is more than enough at 3 mana cost, and then 5, 9, 12, and 6. Nothing really costs too much mana. Our Assassin's Mark is 35. What you can do is you can link your Assassin's Mark on hit to an inspiration if you want to get some more mana cost reduction there, so you can have an even lower mana pool than I have. Here we have the Berserker, Forbidden Flesh and Flame. These were actually fairly cheap. I was quite surprised. And you'll see that we have an Adorned. We have a 134. Let's see, these are going for 33 divines. That's around what I paid. I think I might have paid a little bit more. This 134 is a breakpoint for us for hitting good numbers with our intelligence rolls. We usually get 16. You can get mana reservation efficiency on these jewels, and it gives you a ton. I think that goes up to 8%. And then we also have some fun implicits on here. We've got melee damage and intelligence on this one. There's a lot of good things that you can get. This one has intelligence. Attack speed while holding a shield is pretty good. It goes up to 6, but attack speed while holding a dagger is even better. That goes up to 8. Melee crit multi is okay. That goes up to 15. But then there are multi with elemental skills. There's multi with lightning skills. Those go up to 18. So you'd really prefer to get those if you can. Now, the Adorned is not absolutely mandatory, but I had enough jewel sockets where I wanted to use one. This one has maximum ES and multi, along with a little bit of move speed and intelligence. Getting energy shield on one of these gives you hundreds of ES. It's really strong. So this one, 81, 18, up to 85. So that's almost 400 energy shield from this 35 roll with 5 intelligence on here. Very nice. This one, we got a little bit of strength. We got the strength because I was planning on replacing the Monkey Paw Talisman and losing that all attributes. So I needed the strength, even though I never replaced it. But this, as you can see, gives us 23 strength and int, 11 melee damage, and 25 attack speed with daggers. That's insane. Alongside of the lucky 2 pen roll. We hit pen on the corruption here. So Adorn's very fun to mess around with. It definitely adds some costs and some time to the build. You do not need to do it. You can just go for things like intelligence, multi, and energy shield and have a very strong setup. But I wanted to mess around with it. I actually hadn't built around the jewel yet, and I have some more plans with it. Now that I've been messing with it, I've gotten very excited and want to use it more. Some masteries that are important. We're going lucky spell suppress because we don't have a ton of it. The inverted res on just about any elemental build, you can put this in and get yourself 15 or 20% damage. We use Cull and plus multi from Nightblade for our dagger masteries. We get frenzy charge on hit from the Mark mastery. This one's super important. Increased evasion per 5 int instead of dex. We have so much int that it's actually quite easy to get to evade cap. Evade cap is so nice. We use Ghost Reaver and of course CI. And we come up here and grab some more attributes. This is my first int stacker in a very long time. I'm sure this could be done more efficiently than I'm doing. Actually, I do recommend taking Wind Dancer. I did not, but I think it actually might be better. If you are doing super juice content where you are getting hit 10, 20 times per second, this might not actually be that good because you're going to be getting hit often enough where your evasion, where your less damage taken if you haven't been hit by an attack recently might not always be up. But if you are doing any other sort of content, bossing, etc., Wind Dancer is going to be pretty nice for you because of our evade cap. I did not have this on, and honestly I should have just taken off one of the points from here to just do that now and do as I say, not as I do. So I think that's going to be it from me. Lightning Strike of Arcing, phenomenal build. This is going to be close to one of my build of the leagues. It played fairly similar to the Dual Strike build as far as like really high defenses, chaos inoculation, but this ultimately was a lot more fun to play because Lightning Strike of Arcing rocks. Tons of chains, tons of damage, and I actually think I ended up liking this one better than Dual Strike of Ambidexterity simply because of how nice the mapping was. The only problem with Lightning Strike is, of course, you have to do that kind of funky positioning. Get yourself into the right spot. You can get the melee hit and then like another melee hit and a projectile. I don't even really know how it works, but if you position yourself just right, you can see your damage increase significantly. So you might go from, you know, a 10 million melee hit to 10 million plus 2 projectile hits or whatever, triple your damage. So Lightning Strike is kind of funky in that way. That positioning on bosses is important, and I don't love that about it, but I do love the mapping. It was so much fun and finally made Lightning Strike for me feel good to play. So if you have any questions on the build, stop on my Twitch, twitch.tv/AER0___. Be happy to help you out. If you have any questions about how to craft some of the gear to replace some of the weird and niche stuff that I have in here, please let me know. I'd be happy to help. We are already onto a new build. We are playing a Bino's Kitchen Knife. Bino's Kitchen Knife? Bino's Kitchen Knife? We are playing a kitchen knife build. It is a tier 0 unique that costs 10C. and we are having a ton of fun with it. It is a Blade Blast of Dagger detonation build, and I'm really loving it. We're using Perfect Agony. It's an assassin. We're gonna be working that out on stream after this video comes out today. So I'm gonna go get that done. Let's edit this video, and I will see you on the stream very soon. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here. And as always, take care.